Welcome back to Majority Rules. I'm Lauren Leader, and I am back for another show. We will be here every Thursday around 4, sometimes 5, to talk about all the issues relative to women, women's leadership, women in politics, all the most important things that I know us in the majority, those of us in the majority really care about. Today we're talking about moms, mom life, mom politics, not the sugar-coated version, because I'm here with my friend Reshma Saujani, who's going to join me in a second, and we're going to have the real deal conversation about all the things that are holding moms back, that are keeping us from being all that we can be. So lots to talk about there. It was a very full and powerful week in the world of women and women's news, and a whole lot of things went down. I, for sure, have top of mind the new video that was released yesterday by the families of the abducted girls who remain, after 229 days, still in captivity by Hamas. And the video, if you haven't seen it, it is painful to watch. They've been savaged by these men. In fact, the cover of the New York Post today, the cover just reads "Savages," which seems like the right cover. But it's impossible not to think about these girls after having seen this video. And, we know that the conditions under which they're being held are just unimaginably horrible, because we have heard from hostages who've been released. We know that many of the women are subject to torture and sexual abuse and just horrors that I can barely mention. But to see their faces and to see them sort of pleading for their safety in these videos, I honestly don't know how the families endure. And, my friend Sheryl Sandberg has just put out a new documentary. We're going to try to get her on the show soon, that documents the abuse of women by Hamas in Israel and on October 7th and since. And it's just, you can't look away. It is so important. And we have to keep these girls in our thoughts and prayers. And God willing, the international community can find a way to get the hostages home. And it's just beyond that these girls are still being held 229 days later. It feels like this was kind of a week in a lot of ways for thinking about some of the worst of what women sometimes endure, not just because of what's happening for the girls that are being held by Hamas and as I just shared, but also the story of Cassie's abuse by Diddy and the release of this horrific video of him kicking her and beating her in the hallway of a hotel. And it reminds us that 1 in 3 women have been victims of domestic violence, meaning violence by intimate partners or people that they know. And again, it's like you see these things in abstract, you sort of know, but to see that, the graphicness of the video. The other thing that's been really interesting this week is, of course, Diddy released a video apologizing, sort of tearfully pleading for forgiveness, talking about his own past redemption. It's pretty hard to take because he, of course, denied the allegations. He had lots of people around him denying her, denying Cassie's account. Cassie just a couple of hours ago actually released a statement about her healing process and about what she's going through now that this video is out there. And she said something that I think is really interesting. She said, "My only ask is that everyone open your heart to believing victims the first time." There's been a lot about this online. This has been sort of an ongoing conversation since the Me Too movement, this question of believing women and giving them the benefit of the doubt. We know, of course, not all accusations against men are true. And it is, unequivocally true that false accusations do happen. But in cases like this, when there were actually multiple women that said that he had been abusive to them, the public, these women deserved at least more attention to their cases than they got. And it's only now, because he's been caught on video, it feels like that he cares at all about, that he's contrite at all, which is pretty painful to watch. So I'm thinking a lot about all of the victims of domestic violence and of Cassie, who has to go through this in the public eye. So we shall see what kind of backlash there is against Diddy, whether he gets held, whether there's a case, whether he goes to jail, whether he gets canceled for this, what happens to his career now. It's really interesting. Apparently Peloton pulled his music off of Peloton, for whatever that's worth. But In other news this week, and the news of the it's like shocking news week on all fronts and all levels. The other piece is Nikki Haley announcing yesterday that she's voting for Donald Trump. I think disappointing, letting down a pretty significant number of her voters who until like 2 weeks ago were still voting for her in major primaries. It's hard to kind of stomach the hypocrisy there. She has said for months that he was irrational, that he was dangerous, that the country couldn't survive another Trump presidency. But apparently Biden is worse in her eyes. And so she is now voting for Trump. And keep in mind, the last person standing, the last one standing in America who's willing to continue to fight against Trump on the Republican side, it's Liz Cheney. She's the only one. We've heard a little bit from Paul Ryan that he is sort of backing off of his support for Trump. Interesting, since he was such an enabler. I was there in Cleveland in 2016. He was on stage all day, every day, endorsing Trump at that point. So very interesting. But Nikki Haley somehow triggered this visceral reaction, I think, for a lot of people who were hoping that she was going to take a different tack. A lot of conservative pundits, friends of mine, have all said they were expecting this, that everybody eventually seems to capitulate and support Trump. But it feels like a real, I think for a lot of people, a gut punch on Nikki Haley. And then, of course, the last topic before I bring in Reshma, because we ought to talk about all things moms and mom politics, is Trump and birth control. Are we really coming for birth control? We are, we're not. It's Monday, it's Tuesday, we change our mind. We, see where the wind blows on American politics. He, a couple days ago, said that he thought we should leave birth control up to the states, which is a pretty horrifying, I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to worry about a college kid in Texas not being able to get her birth control. I mean, it's just so insane. And by the way, condoms never seem to be in the mix here, but we digress. So we're going to come for the birth control pills. Oh, wait, no, voters don't like that. We're not coming for the birth control pills. So Trump changed his mind. He put out this all caps. If it's all caps on Truth Social, it's got to be true. All caps on Truth Social. No, I'm good with birth control, says the philanderer. So anyway, who knows? The point is, can you trust Trump on any of this? Kind of hard to argue that you can. So that's this week in Lady Politics. It's been quite something. But I want to spend most of our time today talking with one of my favorite people here, anywhere. My friend, my sister in the movement, my friend Reshma Saujani, who has come to, a lot of fame for her amazing work getting setting up Girls Who Code, starting Girls Who Code, bringing huge attention to the problems of women in tech. And now she has taken this other tack. If you haven't followed it, she started this amazing organization called Moms First. I think the pandemic may have driven her over the edge. I think that's part of it. Drove a lot of us really over the edge. So Reshma, we got some stuff to talk about. Hi. Good, welcome to Majority Rules. Where do we even begin? I want to have the real mom talk, because I think about a couple things when I think about momdom. I think about all of the mythology, all of the isn't it the best thing that's ever happened to you? Aren't you so happy every single day that you wake up with your children? That's the stuff people say. And then you've got the other side. We talked last week about our friend Harrison Butker and his truly magical thinking that somehow the only purpose of women's lives is to have children. A couple million of us beg to differ. But it is it feels like a really, really hard time to be a mom. I'm not imagining it, am I?
No, I mean, I think it's probably always been a really hard time to be a mom. I just think now moms want to be honest about it. And I think the pandemic really kind of opened that up. We realized that, yes, we're doing 2/3 of the unpaid labor at home. Yes, oftentimes we're the breadwinner of our family, and that no one is coming to save us. Potentially not our partner, not our employer, and certainly not the government. And I think that what we've seen at Moms First has really just ignited a movement of moms, who are ready to fight for themselves. This quote, we had our Motherhood Summit, last week. We had 400 moms kind of in person, we were oversubscribed, and we had 15,000 moms watching online, right? There's this kind of desperation, I think, for things to actually change in America. And this quote that's really moved me by the scholar Andrea O'Reilly, which is that motherhood is the unfinished business of feminism. And I think that's certainly true.
Okay, so we're going to get to politics in a second, but can we talk about this like shared burden at home thing? Because I got to tell you, like, I cannot believe we're still having this conversation. Like, I think about how the feminine mystique mobilized my mom and my mom's generation, this sort of like, as you say, it's always been hard, but like this sort of oppressive BS of the 50s where, women really were forced to stay home and had to bear all the burdens. And, I was raised by parents who like were really trying to turn that upside down. My dad cooked and he changed diapers and that was like, a big deal in the 70s. And so kudos to him. But like, how are we still in this place where, men, by the way, I've seen studies, tell me if you think this is true. I've seen studies where men say that they do half the household work, but like the women never agree with them. And by the way, we're talking obviously here about hetero couples. We'll get to the rest in a minute. But like you would think with the advent, of gay marriage, of all these changes in gender roles, like, are we really still talking about the fact that women are doing like 75% of the labor at home?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think men don't hold the same cognitive labor, right? Like,
What does that
oh
mean?
no, like,
What do you mean?
did my son grow out of his shoes? Do I
Oh,
need to buy a new pair, right? Like,
they're
did we
not
pack a
worried.
diaper bag? Like, what happened to, my son's sleepy toy? Like, with all that cognitive labor takes up so much rent in our mind. And that division of that labor has not really shifted.
Is that our fault, or is it because we won't let things go, or is it because they're really not stepping up? Like I've said to my friends, like all of my friends, working women friends, you're right, it's not just like the stress labor, but they're also like, if I say to them, why isn't your husband like booking all the classes, right? Like taking care of setting up, they're like, oh, he's not capable of that. I'm like, he runs a company. How is he not capable of like calling and signing them up for hockey? So is it us? Is it them? Like, where is this?
I think it's all of it, right? I think we haven't gotten rid of our mom guilt because I think there's this expectation that when you work, you're not a good mom. And so we're always kind of making up for that. I think the second thing is really policy. I think about my own marriage, right? It's like I took paid leave, my husband did it, and since then we've never been able to get the ratio right because now I know where all the stuff is and he does it and I'm constantly pissed off and angry about it. And he thinks he's doing a lot because he's probably doing more than his father did, but it's not as much as I'm doing. And that's our argument in couples counseling forever, right? And so policies like gender neutral paid leave, or actually like what Deloitte does, which is like kind of sort of make people take it, both men and women. It shifts the ratio at home. We don't have more of that. Even just think about the reaction to remote work, right? We're still pushing back on that when we know that, in particular, women at a certain time period in their lives, whether it's when a child is just born or when their elderly parents are sick, because we're also doing that caregiving work on both sides, that maybe we want to let women kind of just have control over their schedule. And the inability for us to kind of, again, not, to be able to just treat workers differently at different stages of their life isn't possible. I mean, just think about the school day. Like, why is the school day 30 to 3 and the workday 9 to 5? I mean, you're just setting us up to
Reshma,
fail.
I
So
could
there's
go, I
lots.
could like wax poetic on the BS school day, which was built for a time when people didn't have jobs. Like I have a kid that gets out at 12:30 on Fridays. Like who thinks that's a good idea? Like it's just insanity. And by the way, like the random school holidays and then, like snow, who's supposed to watch the kids on snow days? Like when you have, especially if there's two working parents or for lower income people who can't take the days off. I mean, this stuff is like, it's like we are stuck in 1955, but the world has moved on, but yet somehow
And I think
hasn't.
I think the harder thing is, well, I don't know about you, but like before the pandemic, I'm like, maybe they just don't know.
Who doesn't
Maybe
know?
they're just them, the school administrators, the Congress people, my partner, but everybody saw. You saw it on Zoom, you saw it in the articles, you saw it in your own house. And so there's no excuse now, right? There's no longer an excuse for not changing things. I think they just don't care. And I think the other part, this is like where our own responsibility comes in. It's just, we just take it and take it and take it
We're
and just
not going to take it anymore, Reshma. We're
no,
not
we're
taking
not.
it
That's why
anymore.
we're building Moms First and the work that you're
I know.
doing. It's like it is, we're not going to take it anymore. But there's a little bit of like consciousness raising that has to happen. Like the sense of that, like, no, you're not crazy. Things are broken. And, I'm not describing utopia. I'm describing Norway. I'm describing Canada. France, the UK. I mean, other countries have either figured it out or are figuring it out.
Okay, we're going to come back to that in a second, but can we talk about the paternity leave thing for 1 second? Because I was thinking when you were talking about that, about the blowback, you remember the backlash against Pete Buttigieg when he took paternity leave, right? And like, I hear really smart, people I respect say, well, he's a cabinet secretary, you don't do that, that's ridiculous. But he was trying to make a point, and I think like it is really important to recognize same-sex couples. There is this like shifting. I always thought there would be more of a shifting dynamic around this stuff because you have same-sex couples and, also because there are so many single parents. I mean, I'm a single parent, as you know. I'm very lucky. I have an ex who's, very supportive and shows up because, he shows up in person to take care of my kids. But, there's all these other kinds of families, right? Like we started by talking about like the husband-wife dynamic, this like oldest time hetero dynamic. But then like there's all these other couples. I don't know what happens. I mean, this is going to sound really ignorant and stupid, but in a lesbian couple, do both moms just feel guilty all the time? That's my question.
Well, it's funny. I asked Claire K. Miller this question at the New York Times, and she kind of blew my mind. She said, listen, here's the thing. Like the problem that when I studied same-sex couples, what you found that like they basically one parent had to be the always on, always around, always available caregiver. And the problem is less about gender or sex. It's about American workplaces, this expectation that you have to always be on, always be available creates a default. The difference though is in same-sex relationships, they at least have a conversation and they decide who's it going to be. And I think in heteronormative relationships, oftentimes we're just the default.
Yeah. So, Sheryl Sandberg, obviously, like, that was like a whole thing around that she talked a lot about was, finding the partner that's going to be the equal partner. Yeah, good luck. Because somehow, like, and I think seems to be especially true in like among the Gen X men, like they're kind of liberated-ish. Like they'll say that they want to be the equal partners, but it seems like, I mean, clearly a bunch of them are. And I have friends who have husbands that are very good equal partners, but like something still got missed along the way, right? That like there's so many, I mean, some of it's structural, right? And some of that is because we still have a lot of companies that are being run, in this very male dominated kind of the model of men who still have wives who stay home, right? That's investment banking, that's tech, that's like a lot of fields that are super male dominated, which is basically all of them, right? But it is also something about like the gender norms that like they changed for us, but somehow like they missed the men. Like how did that happen? I don't know. It's fascinating to me.
I think it's cultural, right? I think it's cultural because I think a lot of these men are gaslit when they do take time.
Okay, well that's a really interesting point, which is like they know they should, but then they get backlash if they do the right thing. That's interesting.
See what happens to Pete Buttigieg. You quite frankly see what happens to the women in your office. And again, it goes back to the fact, I mean, I think we can't just look at families of bankers, but you have to look at a typical kind of, American family and what happens there, right? Because now we're living in a society where if you are in a heteronormative relationship, two people have to work. Single moms are struggling every single day, and we should be building a world, quite frankly, that allows them to just, thrive, not survive. And I think the problem there is the expense of childcare is so expensive. And combining that with the motherhood penalty, what's happening is for a lot of families, a lot of women are downshifting in their careers. And
right, because they can't afford it.
They can't afford it, right? So maybe they actually, are qualified as a nurse, could actually make more income, but can't do that, are now working part-time, maybe in retail, right? Or in sales. And because of the cost of childcare, right? So they're having to stay home like do the pickup at 3:00, right? And work.
Because someone has to. But look, so here, we've known about this forever, right? Like I came into this work like 30 years ago around the paid leave issue, right? Like this is not new. Like we've been arguing about this in the United States forever because we are the last nation on earth that hasn't addressed the problem, right? Like we had a little bit of help during the pandemic, right? Rosa DeLauro passed the child care tax credit. Like there were some things, there's these little moments we thought maybe we were gonna get close to paid leave. At least we got Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. But like we're still having this fight all these years later. Why, in your opinion, why do we never get this done?
Because we didn't build base. And this has been an issue on the left, and we've mobilized on the left. And sometimes we refuse to mobilize moms. You know what I mean? And we just haven't had base. this is not a partisan issue. It's at all. And we've treated it like it's a partisan issue. And so I think that needs to change. When Biden was so close to getting Build Back Better done, it's easy to kind of blame Joe Manchin, but at the end of the day, we chose not to pass paid leave, put our money in paid leave and childcare. And we did have money for lots of other things, right? Including bailing out the airlines. And so you often wonder, you know what I mean? If 5 million moms showed up, Democrats, Republicans, like black, white, poor, single moms, and said, yep, nope, enough is enough, whether that would have changed things. And I'm betting on the fact that it will. I actually think that this can get done regardless, right, of who's kind of sitting in Washington, because I don't believe that it's a partisan issue, but I think we have to start organizing in that way. I think the second thing is that we have to organize around the things that actually around the identity that creates the most amount of emotion. And I think that that's motherhood. And, if you examine what happened in the past in the 1900s around suffrage, around Richard Nixon, we divided moms. We created the mommy wars between stay-at-home moms and working moms, between black moms and white moms, between single moms, gay moms. We created division, right? And so we have an opportunity now to change our language, to change the way that we organize, to bring people together, to find that common ground and say, we may disagree on a whole host of issues, but we agree on paid leave and childcare, right? And
Right.
so let's work together on it.
Well, I mean, we divided ourselves because we didn't all agree, right? And a lot of this stuff, some of it was sabotaged by conservative women who, really were very wedded to needing the stay-at-home mom choice to be the right one, and to, folks on the conservative Christian right who wanted to support that. And, the Harrison Butkers of days gone by, right? Like that's partially how we got here. But it also like I got to tell you, I'm not sure I will ever forgive Barack Obama, when he had the presidency in both houses of Congress and he didn't pass paid leave then either, right? So Democrats have let us down as much as Republicans have. We should have gotten this done decades. Barack Obama could have gotten this done. Why?
Yeah. I mean, same with abortion, right? I mean,
yeah,
none of these, I mean, you just saw Louisiana today, right? Where they're criminalizing, and all of these, even abortion comes down to motherhood. 6 out of 10 women who get an abortion are moms. They're making an economic choice because they're often living in a state that doesn't have paid leave and doesn't have childcare and doesn't have pre-K. And so this all comes down to motherhood. And I think that we have an opportunity to organize base, and so irrespective, and Claudia Goldenette, she's, again, an incredible woman, economist, Nobel winning. She said something interesting to me. She said, listen, also, Reshma, we don't have to only look at the federal government at the place where change is actually going to be made. She's like, workers' comp, for example, never passed federally, but it was one on the state level. And you are actually seeing a lot of progress on these issues, in particular, as you know, paid leave in the states.
Yep, New York is doing some really incredible things on paid leave. So part of the hallmark of 2A is that we do open this up to conversation. So if anyone in our on the Zoom would like to also ask questions or participate, you can just raise your hand and Isaac will let me know. And because we have just a few minutes left. So all right, Reshma, so what's getting you out of bed every morning to do this? Because it feels like, I was impressed that you decided to do this, because I do feel like this is one of these issues that just feels so interminably intractable. But you're obviously, you're a pathological optimist like I am. And I know you're really motivated. So what's keeping you, what's giving you the juice to keep working for moms?
Every generation of sisters that came before us, we're not the first to fight this fight, right?
We are not.
And so progress is incremental, I think, when it comes to women's rights. And, I feel like I was, blessed to feel like this is the fight that I want to fight. And, maybe they'll happen before I die and maybe it won't, but that can't be the deciding factor of engaging or not engaging, right? So I think that, I think you have to feel I feel like we're close. I'm hopeful, right?
Do I need to call your husband? Because I will. I think we need to have an intervention. I'm going to make him a map of where all the stuff is in your house. That's what I'm going to do.
Listen, I think that
I'm going to explain. I'm going to be like, listen,
I did marry one of the good ones.
Shit to do.
Yeah. No, I married one of the good ones.
I'm teasing you.
Getting there. But I think part of it is also just, it is also like, I think you would appreciate this too. Like, I also want to be there,
I know.
you know?
All right, I concluded, here's my mommy advice of the day. Would you like to hear it? Because I have 3 kids, so you know. I do know a little something. Whatever any of us learned from having a whole lot of children. You can actually never be there enough for them. It's physically impossible. There is no number of hours in the day in our lifetimes that would ever be enough for them. You can be there, like the stay-at-home moms, even the stay-at-home moms will say, like they go to get their hair done and the kids still say they haven't been home enough, that they haven't seen them, that there's always something that they missed. There's always like the cupcakes that you missed that one day, whatever it is. So I have decided that since I can never make it enough, I can never satisfy their need for time with me, I am going to not try. I am going to do my very best. And I'm going to give myself grace for the rest of it because I have things to do. And I know that someday they will look at what I do. And even though right now they could care less, that eventually they're going to look and they're going to be like, okay, that was worth it. I'm glad you missed my thing at school. They're going to say that, right, Reshma?
Yes, mic drop. I feel like that's like the great mommy lesson of the day.
Boom. You can never do enough. Let it go. We can't win. We're always going to lose. There will always be therapy for it later. So do the stuff that makes you feel alive and do good in the world, which is what I know you get up and do every day. I adore you. I think you're amazing. And I'm always here for the, leaning on the
same way.
mommy.
You've been in this fight with me for a very long time.
But you know what? Like, that's it. You said it. We're never done. Like, all of this is like the work of our lifetimes. And we're never done. And so we need to help each other and, also tell the dudes that they need to step up. And so we're in it with you. And we're going to so everyone should follow Moms First. We will put out on socials all the ways to do that. They're amazing. They do great convenings, really smart work. Everyone should sign on to follow Reshma, not just in
join
her
the Motherhood, which is our volunteer base. We're building base. So join.
Love it.
And volunteer in our movement.
Amazing.
So.
I'm in. Thank you, Reshma Saujani, for joining me. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Majority Rules. It's been a great conversation. If you want to weigh in, if anyone wants to talk in our last couple of minutes, I'm happy to hear from you. We will be back next week. Our guest next week is Minnie Tamarju, who runs Reproductive Choice for All, which used to be called... it had a different name, but now I can't remember what it was. But she is an amazing abortion rights activist, worked for Hillary. She is a baller, as they say in my business. And we're going to have a really good conversation about what's next for abortion rights. She'll be with us at 5 p.m. Eastern next week. So tune in, bring your questions, bring your comments. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends. You'll find us on the socials all week long. I'm Lauren Leader. Thanks for joining Majority Rules.